What if I'm doing the same thing to God? The same thing that I'm critical of my spouse of? What if I'm doing the same thing to God? And would he have the same complaint about me that I have from my spouse or about my spouse? This message is for all of my married folks out here that might find themselves in a situation with their spouse. I was in prayer and I got to thinking, I said, wow, the very complaints and issues that I have with my wife, or you have with your wife, or have with your husband, does the Lord have those same complaints and issues with you? You know, it's thinking about like we could get so angry and so upset and so frustrated. And I stopped and thought, what if I'm doing the same thing to God? The same thing that I'm critical of my spouse of? What if I'm doing the same thing to God? And would he have the same complaint about me that I have from my spouse or about my spouse? If that thought doesn't come into your mind, it's like there's no need for you to temper your words, temper your actions. And as husbands particularly, it's like I learn more and more about how God feels about us each day that I play this role as husband. Like, in what ways do we as his children try to dodge accountability, shift responsibility? In what ways do we yell and cuss at God to pressure him into doing what we want him to do? In what ways do we try to manipulate God with our words and with our actions as if he doesn't know where our heart is at? And to think about how patient and loving God is in spite of those things, in spite of our human ways, the amount of love that he has to have for us in order to put up with and endure that from his children. Think about the times in which we disappoint God and break his heart and frustrate him, and that because of his everlasting love that he comes back to us or never leaves us nor forsakes us. That God has already suffered the ultimate heartbreak of watching his son get killed, only for him to rise up, watching his son go through pain and be blameless. So there's nothing that we could do that could break God's heart, nothing more that we could do that would make him turn his face from us. Now it's all about us finding our way to him. Like, you learn a lot in marriage, you learn a lot about yourself. And I've watched how the enemy tries to attack me with sadness and depression, and then realize all he's going to do is just go to God. So now what the enemy has been using is anger and frustration. And it's interesting, I was having this conversation with my mentee about even God gets angry. God says in his Bible, be angry, but sin not. Anger isn't necessarily bad, but what do we do with that anger? That's the issue. That's the problem. And that's where I'm learning how and where to lean on the Lord with my anger. Because I've noticed that my anger separates me from him. And I'm diving deep into that.